Do we have,
We've had movers.
we had some
in our
citizens
house.
ask about,
They're selling her
Don't live
stuff.
there anymore anyway.
Me
Are they selling her stuff?
going
yet?
on the air and telling the status. Do we have an answer on that? Were you gonna address that?
I'm not touching his stuff.
Okay.
Really?
I'd like to welcome everyone to this fifth meeting of 2020, this Tuesday, St. Patty's Day, March 17th, and certainly this St. Patty's Day is quite different than those in the past with the COVID-19 virus. So we want everybody to be safe and use appropriate personal precautions. And for the record, we have no one in the audience tonight. So currently. So we'll begin. We don't even have our invocation. There he is. Mr. Gary Carnahan is joining us. We'll provide the invocation. And I'll lead the pledge. Please rise.
All right, let's pray together. Thank you, Father, for these faithful servants who gather here tonight to do business for the city and for the citizens of Garland County. And I just pray that you would bless them, give them wisdom as they consider the items on the agenda. We want to remember especially the family of Officer Brent Scrimshire. It was an amazing service and honor that we saw, and I know that doesn't take away from the emptiness in their hearts for his family and his wife and his children. So we pray, we want to continue to pray that you would meet their needs and help them. Pray that they would feel this verse from your word. Fear not, I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through fires of oppression, you will not be burned, for I am the Lord your God. And Father, we want to pray for our city manager, our mayor, our directors, our county judge, and other local officials who are working hard to protect our staff and our citizens from this coronavirus. We pray for the medical professionals and public health officials who are working tirelessly to protect all of us from the virus and to treat the patients who are already infected. And we want to pray for our first responders and dedicated individuals who are working to ensure the health and safety of our communities. And we pray that you would provide them with wisdom they need to make the difficult decisions and take decisive actions to protect Americans all across our country. And we pray that we would all be able soon to recite this verse, that you are the God who dwells, that we dwell in the shelter of the Most High and rest in the shadow of the Almighty, that you are our refuge and our fortress. You are God in whom we trust. We believe you will save us from the snare and from the deadly pestilence and cover us with your wings. Your faithfulness will be our shield, so that we will not fear terror at night or by day, and we will not fear the pestilence of the darkness, nor plague that destroys at midday. Thank you, God, that we can trust you even in the darkest hours. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gary.
She made it.
Hi, Karen. Please call the roll.
Director Holliday,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
Clark,
Here.
Weatherford,
Here.
Garcia,
Here.
Polly,
Here.
McCabe.
Here. This time we'll consider the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions to the agenda, or items to be moved from the consent agenda to new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve
Thought there
the...
was.
Mayor, there are two items. I
Okay,
believe that
please.
Items 6 and 7, one having to do with the farmer's market. They're not going to be able to open, and so the extension of the lease is not pressing at this time, so we'd ask that that be removed, as well as the free ride day. Those are items 6 and 7 on your agenda.
Okay. So that will be an amendment to the agenda.
You would need a motion to that effect.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I so moved, Mayor.
Got a motion to amend in a second by Director Jones to remove items 6 and 7. Can I have we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Yeah,
I
Mayor,
think there's another addition.
I'll go ahead and address it. We did prepare a draft of an ordinance for the board's consideration this evening, and if it's the board's will to add that to your agenda, you may do so. It pertains to ceasing the public meetings of the Board of Directors until further notice, and authorizing the city manager with some extraordinary authority. I don't know if that's the will of the board to do that or not. If you want to continue to meet in the way that we're meeting tonight, where speakers come in one at a time and we can find the room to approximately 10 people as recommended by CDC, we can certainly continue to do that.
I move we add it to the agenda and then we can discuss it.
Second. A motion to add, was Director Foley, did you second that? Or?
I did.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. So we're still, so is it appropriate to discuss that at this time because we're still trying to weigh out the agenda?
That's correct. The motion to amend, the second motion to
Oh, I'm
amend
sorry.
by adding this
That's right.
item has been approved.
Okay.
And so you would need to now discuss and/or vote on the approval of the agenda as amended the second
Right.
time.
Okay,
I move approval of the agenda as amended twice.
Second.
twice. All in, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. The agenda is amended twice. Thank you.
Approved.
Approved twice. All right. This time we'll consider approval of the minutes of March 3rd, 2020. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Director Clark, seconded by Director Jones. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes of March 3rd are approved. Recognition of guests. We don't have any guests.
Right.
Consider city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Several things to talk about tonight related primarily to the COVID-19 and some of the response that is happening not only at the city but through a task force. Right before this meeting, I received another email. These are coming in twice a day from the Division of Emergency Management, Garland County Emergency Management. Currently, there are 24 presumptive cases in the state. That's up to today. Yesterday was 22, and so we had a day where we actually didn't increase. But from the report we received this morning to the report we received this evening, that is up to, so a total of 24. There are many declarations that have happened over the past really week, and it's kind of hard to believe that it was a week ago today that we had our first presumptive positive case. And we'll talk about a lot of the things that have happened since. The state declaration, the governor declared a state of emergency on March 11th. Local declarations, currently there are 32 counties and 2 cities that have declared. Verbal declarations are now at 15. That's up 2. And I think yesterday that was up somewhere around 12. Written declarations were at 19. There were 7 additions since the last report. Requests for assistance per jurisdiction, that's 185, which is up 91. The best part about this report is currently there are 0 fatalities in Arkansas. Presumed positive cases, as I mentioned, are 24. Persons under investigation are 65. That's up 33 today. Persons with an identified risk being monitored with daily Arkansas Department of Health check-in and guidance is 346. That's up 53. Positive thing is past persons under investigation with negative test results is 214, which is up about 18. Something that we need to be cognizant of as we start sharing some of this information is the state originally were only able to do 20 tests per day and get those results. Results take 2 or 3 days to get once they do the test. Currently, I believe they're prepared and able to do 40 tests per day. In listening to the governor's press conference and the director of the Department of Health, as they receive the additional machines, they will be able to start testing about 440 cases per day. They're also using a couple of outside laboratories that hospitals are also using. So we will see cases increase. That's going to happen as additional testing takes place. That doesn't mean that the virus is spreading. It just means we're aware of those that may be asymptomatic and are testing positive that may have had exposures. The next 15 days are going to be critical to the state and to the city. We're in a period of time where we can still manage through our healthcare system, but we have to flatten that bell curve. And as Dr. Ross said this morning, we know that we're going to have cases, and we know that those cases are going to increase, but it's important that we try to flatten the bell curve to make sure that they are able to have continuity of service to the patients. We don't want to overrun our hospitals and clinics. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we're trying to do there as a task force. All of these 24 cases are within 8 counties. And Garland County is one of 8. And 6 of those have 1 to 4 people currently positive, and 2 of those are between 5 and 9 cases. I will say this, from what we know very little about the 2 positive cases that we have. What we do know is they weren't community spread. It's a husband and wife that had taken a trip and were at a location that had a much larger outbreak than we have. They returned home, and hopefully we all have this and think like this particular couple. They quarantined themselves at home. One did fall ill, and they made arrangements to be tested, and both tested positive, and they continue to be in quarantine. They had no interaction with anyone else, so that's a very positive thing. As I mentioned, we had our first case a week ago, and we've gone from last Tuesday planning great celebrations today to we have no parade. We saw live racing at the second largest weekend of the city run without spectators, as we saw all of the major sports across the United States cancel. We now, as of Sunday, Oaklawn has closed the casino. Today, the governor has shut down 2 other casinos in the state. To my knowledge, that is the only action that the governor has taken as far as actually closing a business. That's very important to some of our restaurants and hotels that we'll be talking about. This thing is so fluid. 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we were seeing daily press conferences from our governor. It's unprecedented. We went from gatherings of 250 to the very next day gatherings of 50 to yesterday it's gatherings of 10. We've seen our convention center, the largest convention center in the state, the busiest convention center in the state, it's closed for 2 weeks. It's never happened. We have hotels that are experiencing significant losses from the loss of our conventions. One hotel shared information with us that they had lost $200,000 in business in March, and it's going to appear that they have that same happening in April. We have one of our other large hotels that have closed today, not permanently, but they're going to close for the next 10. They tried to do some things prior to that by shutting the spa, the restaurant, and literally shutting down other ancillary services. We are starting to see some of these employers not able to keep a full staff, and that's very concerning for those that have worked there and may not have pay. So what are we doing in response? And I can tell you that in times like these, our community always comes together. And we are in lockstep with our county government. We are in lockstep with our first responders. We're in lockstep with emergency management and all of the other partners that are working very hard to make sure that we continue to flatten that curve. So we've had a series of task force meetings, and it was a couple of weeks ago that Judge Mahoney and I were in a meeting together, and we had seen some things on the news, and I said, Judge, what would I do if somebody called me and said that they were exposed and they were in one of our areas that had a large number of people? And it came from another city that had something like that happen, and they evacuated the place. And I'm like, that's probably not what we want to do. We probably want to try to contain. So we started talking about that and said, man, we need to get some folks together and make sure that we've got a plan for this, because this is unprecedented. Typically when we have disasters in response, it's after the fact. It's a tornado. It's a flood. It's something that we can visibly see. This is something much, much different than that. So we asked our chief of fire, our fire chief. We asked the director of the Garland County Emergency Management to come together and start formulating a plan, and from that, it started growing. We put together a first responder task force, and there's been a series of these meetings, and each one we pull in additional people that is helping us try to get through this process. Today, we had another meeting at 8 o'clock this morning. We had more than 20 first responder representatives of the area task force. We met at the fire station. I attended, as well as Dr. Gene Shelby, who's our Garland County Health Officer, our Garland County Judge, Daryl Mahoney, Bo Robertson with the Garland County Emergency Management, Chris Rowland with Garland County Health Unit, as well as representatives from St. Vincent's, National Park, LifeNet, Hot Springs Police Department, Fire Departments, United Way, the State Police, the Sheriff's Office. All of us are in there working, making sure that we're communicating. And one of the things that we discussed was making sure that as we leave these meetings that we have some type of unified message to our residents. And so we developed a press release that talks about some of the things that we're doing this week, trying to prepare and plan. And we will be taking this information and developing a website, a link that we'll get out on social media. And as we have some of these updates come through, we'll be updating that particular information. We don't have a news channel here in Hot Springs to where we can call up and go, we'd like to do a press conference on the front steps today, even though they would probably come. We find that this may be the easiest way to communicate with our residents. And I'm sure we will learn as we move through the process additional ways. But out of that meeting today, and this is something that I know the county judge has been working on with one of our local physicians who really brought this idea to bear. And through our contacts that we shared, we were able to procure 10 tents from Tom Daniel Jr., who's helping us through this. We're in the process in preparation of multiple drive-through clinics being established. These will be located in Hot Springs and Hot Springs Village, and really they're to evaluate patients who are experiencing respiratory and flu-like symptoms. These triage clinics are for really informational and evaluation purposes, helping to lessen the stress in the spread of this highly contagious virus. As these drive-through options are made available, more information will be distributed regarding location, hours, services, and when they're being provided, and we're going to update this particular website with that information. However, the providers want to stress the importance of those with mild to moderate symptoms to self-quarantine and stay at home. If you have mild symptoms, stay at home. Healthcare providers at such clinics will be limited to checking fever and other vital signs and symptoms associated with a possible respiratory illness. There are currently no on-site tests available for COVID-19, but they will be doing evaluations and, if deemed necessary, additional screening. I think Dr. Ross said it well this morning. He said an important question to ask yourself before you come to the hospital or your doctor's office is, how sick am I? COVID-19 is a virus, and like any virus, there's no really specific treatment, or there is a specific treatment regimen, but there's not necessarily a cure. Doesn't mean you won't get well. It just means it has to run its course. And in most cases, what they're offering is supportive care. These hospitals, and Mayor, Director Foley, being hospital administrators, you will understand that emergency plans of these type situations is what they've done for years. They practice this. Their plans are working well. But it is still important that we limit and protect our healthcare providers, our nursing staff, doctors, and so on, particularly as Hot Springs is an access point for many other smaller communities around us that bring their patients here. At that meeting, Dr. Shelby shared the statewide COVID-19 hotlines as another option for area residents to get answers regarding the virus. The Arkansas Department of Health hotline, the University of Arkansas Medical Science hotline, those will be part of what we'll be posting. It's part of the press release that went out. The task force is also laying the groundwork to ramp up a local hotline. One of the things we learned from the physician offices today were they were being inundated with phone calls and a lot of times taking them away from patient care. So we're going to try to ease that burden by ramping up a specific hotline locally that we can have staffed. The health of our area citizens is taking primary importance. Yet, as I mentioned, Hot Springs is the state's most popular destination, relies on income from events, conferences, travelers from all over the United States. It is impossible to really recognize what those economic impacts are. As you know, we're heavily relying on sales tax revenues to manage our government. We don't know what that impact will be, but it's very bleak looking at what is happening. We won't know for 60 days because we can't get that information in a timely manner. However, I will say that the forethought of this board in setting a parameter of always holding at least 16% of our fund balance is extremely wise for just times like this. We're going to persevere. We're going to be okay. But we've got some tough times to manage through, and hopefully this will be on the other side of that curve in the next 6 to 8 weeks. As Judge Mahoney said this morning, as we support this ongoing health crisis, we've also got to worry about an economic crisis, an economic collapse of the system. There is information that the Small Business Administration is trying to glean from our local businesses on their losses. We've got information in here, but basically it's a one-page questionnaire. It's not an application for a loan. It's not an application for assistance. It's a document, a tool that they're going to use to let these local restaurants, these local businesses, tell them what they're experiencing. If it's a 90% loss of revenue, what does that mean? And as they get this information, they're trying to develop some federal assistance to come back and help these particular businesses. Our hope is that they make it through over the next 4 to 6 weeks. There's a lot of them that operate on very tight margins, and it would be a shame with all the work that this whole community has done to rebuild what we have today. It's taken 5 years to see that disappear in 2 months. We met with a large group of restaurateurs today, and we heard some discouraging news, but we also heard that they're willing to do things to try to make it through this particular time. And it was kind of a jumble. One would do well one day and not the other. Some are experiencing 20% decline, some 30, some 80. So we encourage everyone to continue to support those businesses. A lot of them are changing their business model to where you can get a cheeseburger delivered to you out on the curb, a great cheeseburger delivered to you out on the curb. They're also doing meal preps that you can pick up, take home, and heat up, kind of the Papa Murphy model. And many are just doing takeout cards that can be used at a later date if you're uncomfortable going in. One of the things that I recommended to them was if they are practicing social distancing, they need to put that out there on their Facebook pages. Let people know that you're only doing every other table, that it's still safe to come in and enjoy a meal. That's today. Again, we're learning things every day. I told that group that our first priority is the health and safety of our community, and we are working to that end. However, we're very concerned of the economic health of our local businesses and city government as well. March is the busiest month of the year for Hot Springs, which equates to higher sales tax revenues that allow the city to fulfill our services to the community. We have no property tax. Several were shocked to learn that this morning, but we have no property taxes, so we rely heavily on these sales tax revenues. But this is certainly not just affecting our city government, it's affecting everyone. The economic impact will affect owners and employees alike, and additional information that we've gleaned and put in this report. Sarah Fowler was there from the United Way of the Washitaws. She also hosted a meeting yesterday to discuss how area organizations are collaborating to assist those in need as community traverses the coronavirus outbreak. And the Hot Springs Resource Guide, the Washita Charity Tracker, there's a lot of good information in that, and we've got those links to this particular report. So the City of Hot Springs, and some of the things that I've implemented today is a hiring freeze across all departments and all positions with the exception of public safety. There'll be some deviations to that, but those will be ones that we'll consider on a case-by-case basis. We're seeing already, a couple of departments having some struggles. Solid waste being one of those. These guys, utilities, wastewater, we have employees that are confined to the cab of a truck in crews. And if one gets it, they all get it. And so it's not any different than we've experienced every year with influenza A or B. And probably none of these are considered positive for COVID, but it is something that we have to monitor a lot differently than we did last year. So we're looking at that, but a hiring freeze is in place through the end of May, and we'll take a look at positions on a case-by-case basis if it impacts primary services that we're obligated to provide. All capital and non-capital spending will be suspended without the express permission of the Deputy City Manager of that respective department and myself. Restrictions for both in-state and out-of-state travel are now in place. This includes previously approved travel. The only exception will be to meet with state agencies where we have to meet with. However, whenever possible, those meetings will take place through via telephone or online, some way to conduct business, WebEx, whatever it might be. So we're going to do our part as we move through this to make sure that we're being great stewards of the tax and ratepayers' dollars. We've got a very good plan in place. We're doing COOP plans, contingency operating plans. We have one that needs to be blown off and updated a little bit for an issue like this. We've asked all departments to submit 3 deep names of who the successor would be in that particular department should someone become quarantined, starting with the city manager and every department thereafter. These are uncharted waters, so we're taking precautions as best we can. Our police department, they have some new procedures in place. We're closing the lobby. However, they'll be able to still use the foyer buzzer and an officer will come out. We're temporarily suspending the public fingerprint services for at least the next couple of weeks. Our public safety assistants will continue to take phone calls and reports over the phone. We've got some additional personal protective equipment that we've got all of the officers using and some protocols to follow. We're postponing or canceling the rabies drive, all tours of the police department, CPA classes, CRACE training, in-service training, and this is throughout the organization as we look at any meetings that are not critical. We'll postpone those. And I like the word postpone versus cancel. It doesn't mean we're going to give up on those. It just means we're going to do them at a later date. And in speaking with Steve Harrison today, not everything that we have is being canceled. It's just being moved to a later date.
Yeah.
Our St. Patty's Day Parade will take place in October 17th, and we're going to have the first ever 17th annual second St. Patty's Day Parade in October, and it's going to be great.
Yes.
So lastly, I'll leave you with this. With this COVID concerns and precautions, the U.S. Census Bureau has recommended delaying the opening of census support sites that were designed to encourage face-to-face interaction between Census Bureau trained individuals and residents, answer questions or concerns with the 2020 census. I can tell you that Harmony's done a lot of work on this and has worked with a lot of great organizations within our community to try to set those up and help set those up. The Garland County Library, Garland County Courthouse, Greater Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce, Hot Springs School District, Fountain Lake School District, Cooperative Christian Ministries and Clinic, Regions Bank, Hot Springs Mall, Habitat for Humanity, Oaklawn United Methodist, Roanoke Baptist Church, All Services Consulting. These are all places that we were going to have some of these census meetings. On tonight's agenda is listed an item to encourage residents who need access, and we just took that free ride day off because these facilities aren't going to be available. However, the forms have already started being mailed out. They started last week. They'll continue this week. Please, they're going to be addressed to current resident. It won't have your name on it. Please fill the information out. You can do so by telephone, online, mail it in. Whatever you prefer, but please get your information in. Getting a complete count on the 2020 census is just as critical today and important today for our community as it was any other time. We're going to continue to keep our community safe. We're going to continue to keep our community healthy. We're going to continue to meet the mission of the City of Hot Springs employees, and that's service to our residents, service to our vendors. We've got a couple of tough weeks ahead of us, but there is not a single person that we have employed that I would not want on this team. We have great staff. We're ready for this challenge, and we're going to get through it. So, Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you for the time.
Any questions for the city manager, Mr. Burrow?
I have
Mr.
two questions.
Director Foley.
With the flattening out of the curve so that we don't have such a high volume of patients for our health care facilities, those nurses have children. And so when they're called out to work, somebody has to take care of the kids. Is there an effort in the community to find sitting services for these children?
I can't answer that, Director Foley. I do know that there was some discussion as we were talking about trying to spin some of these up. We were hoping to have potentially 10, but even having 4 in a time when schools are out is difficult, and it does stress the hospital staff or the clinic staff. So we're working very closely with them on the number that they can staff to make this work. I know that Dr. Ross, as well as National Park, Kevin Hill's clinic, who's been really great to work with, they're monitoring that, and he's aware that the closings of the school and the impact it's having on the nurses. You're exactly right. It does have an impact, has an impact on every organization. But that's probably something we'll be talking about at a future meeting.
I hope we would consider financially supporting those efforts for all the safety officers in our community, whether they're first responders, the fire department, the police department, and I'm not talking about just city, I'm talking about the community, and I would hope that we'd be a part of that, even if we have to support that. As far as the businesses, is there any way, if you have emergency powers, is there any way to relax some of the regulations that the business owners go through, like the restaurateurs, so that they can make food out on the sidewalk or sell out on the sidewalk? Can we relax some of those regulations under an emergency power?
That'll be addressed in the add-on item that the board added to your agenda. There's some things in there that will give us some of that ability.
Okay.
We're monitoring very closely our utility and our water in working with our residents that need assistance through that. We know that there's some tough times for those that may not be able to work and through some of these layoffs, and we're committed to doing what we can, either from a regulatory standpoint or from a a provider standpoint when it comes to providing those services and making sure that we continue to provide those.
Okay, thank you.
Director Garcia.
I may have missed it, but did you say out at the customer service at the water bill paying office, is that open, or do they people just put their payments in the?
It's a great question. We had some discussion yesterday. We were seeing some individuals come in that maybe exhibited some symptoms, whether they had them or not. So we did develop a rudimental way of having a window to where the resident or the customer can come up to pay. We've got a covered area for that, so we don't have to worry about inclement weather. If they need additional services, we're doing that through the phone, making sure that we get them that information. We still have our payment boxes here at City Hall, as well as the Bill Edwards Center. We have the IVR that's up and running. We have the credit card payments up and running. It can be paid online. It can be paid through the phone. But those that feel, we still have a significant amount of the population that just like to come and hand you a check. And for those individuals, they'll be walking up to a window that staff will be manning and taking that payment.
And you'd already taken action regarding disconnects and late fees and extensions.
Yes, ma'am. We discussed that first thing yesterday morning and made some accommodations there.
And I commend your leadership and management and doing all that you are, city
thank you. I
and county
appreciate that.
task force.
It's been a tough time for
Director
everyone over
Jones?
the past week and a half.
Did you name a site yet where they'll be taking their temperatures?
No, but the website that we'll be sending out through social media, be checking the City of Hot Springs page. We're going to put a link over there to that website, and as we spin these up, we'll put that information on there.
Okay.
We just started literally this morning. Once we found out we could get tents and some other things, this is again, it's pretty fluid. So we just started this morning. We think we have 4 locations identified, and sometime tomorrow we'll
look
solidify those
forward.
and get them out there on the website.
Yes, thank you.
Last thing, Mayor, I just, yesterday was a tremendously tough, difficult time for everybody in our city, and I'm so glad Gary mentioned that in his prayer tonight. Our officer, first class, Brent Scrimshire, service yesterday. The outpouring of people that attended the service, the number of people that lined Highway 270, Malvern Avenue, Pine Bluff Street in Malvern, all the way to the cemetery was phenomenal. Something I hope we never see again. But as we told Rachel in the service yesterday, she'll never be alone. She'll always have her Hot Springs Police Department, City of Hot Springs family. But, I also worry about our officers that are out there still each and every night with something like that so fresh in their mind.
Yes.
And I want you to know that command staff, the city, we've had counselors there to help. I don't know that any counseling will get you through that in a short period of time. But these men and women and men, they had to still go out there and protect us. The night it happened, the day after it happened, yesterday. And we had so many organizations from state police, National Park Service, Game and Fish, everyone covering our city. So our brothers and sisters in the Hot Springs Police Department could attend that funeral. And we really appreciate those organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scares me is them little thugs, them little copycats. They always come around.
Do we have any Board of Directors announcements of upcoming events? we're kind of bleak on upcoming events with the,
If we had them, they would,
no more than 10 in a room.
Or
yeah, they're
postponed.
canceled.
Pardon?
They're either canceled or mostly postponed.
Right.
The word.
I do want to take the liberty of not so much an upcoming event as yesterday's funeral services for Officer First Class Brent Shrimshire. We had a proclamation that I had the privilege to read following a few brief comments, and I'd like to read that at this time. Proclamation, City of Hot Springs, end of watch, March 10th, 2020, Officer Badge 176. Whereas Brent William Perry Scrimshire was born April 13th, 1986 in Malvern, Arkansas, to Bill and Anna Scrimshire. He graduated from Malvern High School in 2004 and Henderson State University in 2009. And whereas Brent joined the Hot Springs Police Department on December 31, 2012, he excelled in every aspect of his job, earning recognition as 2013 Hot Springs Police Department Rookie of the Year, 2016 Southwest Arkansas Officer of the Year, and Garland County Officer of the Year, and was twice named Hot Springs Police Department Officer of the Quarter. Whereas Brent was a reputable and honorable policeman, he had a strong affinity towards people, and they were drawn to him. He was warm, friendly, and was dedicated to protect and serve. And whereas to his fellow officers, he was known as Scrim, he cared for them, offering them advice on how to handle challenging situations. He earned their respect, so much so they trusted him with their lives. And whereas Brent loved telling stories, cooking, and entertaining, he was an avid outdoorsman. He enjoyed hunting, fishing, and driving his jet boat. Brent absolutely loved life, and whereas Brent was a loyal and loving husband to his wife, Rachel, father to two beautiful children, Wyatt and Riverland, he was a son, brother, and an uncle. He was a friend to all of his brothers and sisters in blue. Officer First Class Brent Shrimshire was surely be missed by all who knew him, but will never be forgotten. And now, therefore, I, Pat McCabe, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the City of Hot Springs, do hereby proclaim March 16, 2020 as Officer First Class Brent Scrimshire Day in Hot Springs, Arkansas. You witness wherever I hear unto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Hot Springs to be affixed on the 16th day of March in the year of our Lord, 2020.
That's beautiful.
So it was as City Manager Burrows indicated, it was a very moving ceremony, and I think having never attended such a ceremony, the final radio call, end of watch, was quite moving. So, and as indicated to in my comments, that we want to keep the family in our thoughts and prayers. It's important for us as we go forward, not just in the days and weeks to come, but in the years to come, to send a kind note to the family, let them know you're thinking. Sometimes you don't have to do anything but say, just thinking of you, and with a note, and put it in the mail, and you send it to the police department or city hall, and we'll make sure the family receives that note. So keep them always in your thoughts and prayers. We need to earn their sacrifice each and every day. So thank you. This time we'll go to the consent agenda. These are items of a routine nature that don't merit individual discussion. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Got a motion by Director Clark, seconded by
Second.
Director Garcia. All in favor of the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Now we have, under new business, we'll begin with ordinance 020-16. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
A motion
Second.
by Director Garcia, second by Director Jones. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's approved.
Mayor, this is ordinance O 2016, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 5406 that established a first service fee, the fire service fee for emergency medical activities conducted by the Hot Springs Fire Department. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion.
So
Very
moved.
good. Motion to adopt. Director Foley,
Second.
Director
It was a tie.
Holiday.
Holiday. There's a tie. Tie goes to Holiday on this St. Patrick's Day holiday.
Yes, holiday.
All right. We have a staff report. Well, we're bringing our individual going to provide a staff report. Those of you who may be watching us on TV, we do have an empty chamber here with the exception of those city directors and a few staff members. We're trying to abide by no more than 10 in a room. The city attorney, city manager, and city clerk would normally be sitting up here with us, and they've taken a position on the floor to provide more space for each of us so we can keep our distance from each other. And the speakers are being maintained out in the hallway, and Chief Davis has walked in, and he's going to provide us an overview of this subject matter. So welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. My request to you revolves around ordinance number 5406 of 2005. It was enacted as a means to help the fire department defer the costs associated with providing medical first responder services in support of the ambulance service here in Hot Springs. At that point in time, this seemed like it was a good idea. There was much talk in the federal government and in the insurance agencies about doing reimbursement for pre-hospital care, such as the fire department was providing at that time. Since that time, though, it has become very obvious that there is not going to be any kind of Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement, nor are insurance companies going to reimburse first responder fees that might occur before an ambulance arrives on scene. So, since these bills are actually winding up with the taxpayer, something we did not intend, we would ask you to repeal Ordinance 5406 of 2005 and return to the verbiage that was in the original ordinance 4338 of 1993. And this ordinance still allows us to charge for hazardous materials calls so that we can be able to recoup some of the funds associated with the expenditure of disposables such as hazmat suits, equipment, decontamination solutions, and also neutralization solutions, things of that nature. Hot Springs Fire Department feels like that this would be the best for the city. It would help us to be able to have less anxiety on the part of patients that we deal with in the aftermath of some positive experiences. Billing these folks has stained what would otherwise be some very, very positive outcomes for folks on some responses. So we just ask you to please consider repealing Ordinance 5406 of 2005. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Chief Davis? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Morrissey, I would assume we have no one who signed up to speak on this matter?
No, sir.
All right. Discussion amongst the directors.
Did the city
Yes.
manager and city attorney agree with this? Okay. Thank you.
Both acknowledge they do agree. So at this time, if there's no further questions, we will please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinances adopted. Now we'll entertain ordinance number 020-17. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So move.
Second.
Who made the motion? And second was?
Me.
I'm sorry.
Becca.
Directional hearing failed. Director Garcia and Director Clark. So we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. Counselor, please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance O 2017, an ordinance awarding an exclusive franchise agreement to LifeNet, Inc. for the provision of medical emergency and non-emergency ambulance service and for other purposes. That concludes your reading. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Director Jones, Director Garcia. Our staff report, please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Board.
Training Officer Ty Farris will provide the staff report.
Yes.
Thank you.
This recommendation just exercises the 5-year contract extension that was included in the 2014 franchise agreement and for those services to be provided by LifeNet, Inc. LifeNet's been the sole EMS provider since September 19th of 2005. They've had quality customer service to our patients, our community, our citizens, our visitors. We work hand in hand with them on quite a few calls, so our relationship is very good. They were the only entity that responded to the 2014 request for proposal. No other entities request or submitted request at that point. They had no exceptions to our request. Included in that 2014 franchise agreement was this 5-year, after 5 years, we would look to extend it for another 5 years. And at this point, it is the recommendation from the fire chief and the city manager to extend this agreement for 5 years to LifeNet, Inc. Also included in this franchise agreement is annual fee requests proposed by LifeNet. In the last 5 years, they've only had 2 increases. Those were in 2016 and 2019 at 1.5%. But on April 1st of this year, they propose a one-time fee increase of 5%. And then thereafter, an automatic yearly increase that would reflect or be equal to the consumer price index for urban consumers, and at least a minimum of 1% in case the CPUI fell below 1%. And that would be on January 1st of each successive year within those 5 years. Contract extension also contains a request that requires LifeNet to co-locate their dispatch center within the city of Hot Springs PSAP. Our intent for that is to have a smoother transition of calls and a quicker response, especially from the fire department side, hopefully, and just an increase in the dispatch capabilities within the city and those 911 calls that happen within the city limits. At this point, there is no financial impact to the city because LifeNet is a self-sustaining entity, so we don't pay anything to them. The problem with not accepting this proposal is we would have to put out a request for proposal for another, services, and especially in the climate we're in today, that's not a very good idea, in my opinion. That's all I have.
Any questions of Officer Farris? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any, Ms. Morrissey, we didn't have anybody sign up to speak.
No, sir.
Management of LifeNet is here. Should the board have any questions?
Jason, did you have any comments you want to make?
I did such a good job. I'll answer any questions. I think you guys all got your annual reports. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The increases that you've asked for when it comes to like a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy or a Medicare policy, do they have a set payment that you accept? And
Exactly. Even more than that, the simplest way to think about this is the Medicare patients and the Medicaid patients. This will not affect their out-of-pocket at all. They will be paying the same thing that they've paid before because those costs are controlled by the federal government. So, the other thing that can help control this for the community is we have a subscription program that's easy to sign up for on our webpage, and for $75 a year, that takes care of all your co-pays, all your out-of-pocket as well, besides whatever your insurance pays for. So I think there are, between the Medicare and Medicaid and the subscription program, there's really, hopefully, not a whole lot of difference in out-of-pocket costs for our residents.
Director Garcia?
I would just like to say, unfortunately, in my neighborhood, LifeNet comes in pretty often. But from my personal experience, I wanted to thank your EMTs with my husband and how they've been so helpful.
Well, thank you. It's what we do, and it's why we do it, because, people like to help other people, and it's why we're here, and we're happy to do it. So
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments of Mr. Gartner? Thank you.
thank you.
Any discussion amongst the board members?
We've had a time when we have not had such good service in ambulance services, and once they came into town and took it over, I think we have enjoyed superb service and quality of service.
Agreed. No further comments. Please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Folly.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
This time we're going to consider ordinances. Are we just going in succession here with a number?
It would be, Mayor, 2018.
Yeah. 2018. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
Director Foley. Seconded by
Second.
Director Jones. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules and read by title only, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Council, please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance 020-18, an ordinance authorizing actions of the city manager during the impending pandemic associated with coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt so that we can have discussion.
Motion to adopt.
So
Director
moved.
Foley, Director Garcia. Now, for those board members, we have that at our place setting. It was underneath our agenda and all the packet of information there. And, Mr. Albright, are you providing the report?
I will, Mayor, you do have a motion second. I don't know that there was a voice vote on that motion.
It was him and Garcia.
Oh, we already did the,
I think we did.
Mayor, with the escalating events associated with the coronavirus and the almost daily updates that we're receiving from the government about recommendations, guidelines regarding groups, meetings, conversation turned to what do we do with the board meetings? The board meetings have to be public in order to comply with FOIA. And so if we weren't going to be able to do that, what measures would we put in place going forward? And so this was prepared today, so I'll seek your forgiveness if it was hastily done without your input prior to it taking place. But this ordinance deals with the health, safety, and welfare of the employees, residents, and visitors of the City of Hot Springs and its environs, as they are of paramount importance. The spread of the infectious disease known as coronavirus COVID-19 threatens such safety, health, and welfare and constitutes a compelling governmental interest. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the leading national public health institute of the United States and federal agency under the Department of Health and Human Services, has issued and may continue to issue guidelines pertaining to limited face-to-face human interaction designed to curtail the spread of the coronavirus within the nation, states, counties, and municipalities. Such CDC guidelines may impact the ability of the Hot Springs Board of Directors to meet in a traditional public setting for the purpose of conducting the essential business of the city consistent with the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act. As we're here this evening, as the mayor's already mentioned, there's not an audience in the room. There are a group of individuals waiting in the lobby and watching your board meeting on live stream. And if an issue is brought up, they're permitted to come in and speak on that issue. So that's what we put in place for this evening, and I appreciate the city manager's leadership in that way. The President of the United States, the Governor of the State of Arkansas, and the Garland County Judge have all declared a state of emergency in connection with the spread of this coronavirus, and have asked all citizens to follow the established guidelines that have been issued by CDC. Under Arkansas Code Section 1275-108, the state provides for how a local disaster emergency can be declared. In the city manager form of government, that's done by the city manager. That statute goes on to authorize the chief executive, which would be the city manager in a city manager form of government, to do many things, but most importantly, to suspend the provisions of any local regulatory ordinance or regulation for up to 30 days if strict compliance with the ordinance provision would prevent, hinder, or delay necessary actions to cope with the disaster emergency. And further, under Arkansas Code Annotated Section 1447, 120, the city manager is granted the following duties and powers. He or she shall have the powers except those involving exercise of sovereign authority, which under states applicable to municipalities under the mayor-council form of government or under ordinances and resolutions of the city, in effect at the time of its reorganization, may be vested in the mayor. In other words, in another form of government, mayor-council form of government, the mayor would do that, but in the city manager form of government, city manager does. And then under paragraph 11, he or she shall perform such additional duties and exercise such additional powers as may be lawfully delegated by ordinance to him or her by the board. And so that's where we're addressing really the meat of this ordinance. The board finds that the provisions that are enumerated herein are in the best interest of the employees, residents, and visitors of the city of Hot Springs and its environs. And so the board does hereby ordain the following. Section 1, an emergency is hereby declared to exist pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated Section 1275-108. Under Section 2, given the current guidelines issued by CDC and the requirements of the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act, the regularly scheduled public agenda and business meetings of the City of Hot Springs Board of Directors are hereby canceled until further notice by the mayor and/or the city manager. Section 3, during the pendency of this emergency, the city manager or his or her designee shall be granted the following authority pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated Section 1447-120. Paragraph 1, to contract for and purchase or issue purchase or authorization for supplies, materials, and equipment for the various offices, departments, and agencies of the city government, and he or she may contract for or authorize contracts for services to be rendered to the city or for the construction of municipal improvements in an amount not to exceed $1 million. I'm going to tell you that $1 million is there not to shock you, but to let you know that there are some projects, not the least of which is our radio communication location in downtown that is it's behind the curve, honestly. We need to get on that as soon as possible. So if you're not going to be able to meet, we want to be able to give the city manager the authority to engage in that kind of business for the city, provided that same is provided for under the budget adopted by the Board of Directors or be in response of any emergency expenditure associated with the city's response to the pandemic giving rise to the declaration of an emergency. Any and all of the foregoing shall be subject to the competitive procurement rules and regulations established by the Board of Directors under Ordinance Number 6149 of 2016, unless same is in response to an emergency expenditure associated with the city's response to the pandemic giving rise to this declaration of an emergency. Further provided that the city manager shall seek the advice and counsel of the city's finance director and the city attorney in connection with same. Paragraph 2, the city manager would be authorized to establish a curfew as authorized by Ordinance Number 2922 of 1967. Under Paragraph 3, cancel, postpone, reschedule, move, reconvene, or make accommodations for any public meeting, including without limitation meetings of the Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Adjustments, Board of Appeals and Adjustments, Historic District Commission, Civil Service Commission, and any advisory committee of the City of Hot Springs. And number 4, this may be the most important, to manage the in-person, face-to-face interaction between the city's employees and the public at large by any means that he or she may determine to be reasonable and warranted within the guidelines established by CDC. In addition to the foregoing, city managers further authorized to exercise any and all authority granted under Arkansas Code Annotated Section 12-75-108, which is the emergency declaration statutory scheme. Any other ordinances, resolutions, or parts of same that are inconsistent with the provisions of this ordinance are also hereby amended to the extent of such inconsistency. That really is the reading of the ordinance in its entirety, although we do have an emergency clause should the board elect to adopt the body. We would read that separately.
Any questions of Mr. Albright? Director Garcia?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking such quick action and putting this together. As was stated, this is an unprecedented situation, and it's very fluid, and we don't know what changes may occur. And I do not oppose this, but I did have a question about, and I think it would happen anyway, if the board would have communications to the board to keep them abreast of what actions had to be taken.
Well, I think Mr. Burr can certainly answer that, but I have no doubt that he's going to keep you all in the loop on things that are happening in the city.
Thank you. And I imagine all of us have had calls or contacts, but the city does not have the authority to close any business or schools or that lies with the governor. And the city executes these plans, but the city management does not have authority to close any business.
We do not.
And I know I received several questions regarding both ways regarding that. And I just want to make it clear to the public, the city management does not have that authority.
Not in this situation. I mean, there are situations where
Right.
if property is dilapidated or if there's a fire and we need to disconnect power, and things of that sort of.
Yes, but
true-
not related to this.
Different types of emergencies, but not in this scenario, no.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If I'm reading this right, we kind of disbanded the board of directors with this. Is that correct?
Well, if you're not able to meet, we wanted to have some provisions that allow the city manager to continue to deal with the business operations of the city. That's really the purpose behind it. Yeah, I mean, it would expire at any point that the mayor or the city manager called the board back into session. Now, I will tell you that the emergency declaration statute authorizes the city manager to do a lot of what we're talking about anyway, but we're dealing primarily with the financial business of the city.
That was
I guess
part of
I'm not understanding why we would make that call tonight for us not to meet again.
Well, the conversation began with the escalation of what we've been hearing about the COVID-19. I don't know what the recommendations are going to be tomorrow, but I don't think any of us know what the recommendations are going to be tomorrow or how any of us feel tomorrow. So this is a business meeting. That's why we brought it tonight, as opposed to bringing it, at an agenda meeting next week, which would be a business meeting 2 weeks from now.
Director Garcia?
I would look at it that it's very fluid, and 7 million people are on lockdown right now in California in a region, and now that we're expanding our testing in Arkansas, we don't know if we're going to have escalation here or not. If we went on lockdown, we wouldn't be able to come meet, but the business of the city has to continue. I see this as a plan to take care of that situation.
I'll remind you that any time that there's a measure that comes to the board for your consideration, you have, a few options. One is to approve, one is to deny, one is to table, one is to amend. If there's something about this that you would like to see worded differently, we can certainly accommodate that.
Is there two purposes of this? Is it one to declare an emergency so we have access to certain funding, and then the other is to act in the absence of the board?
Yeah, the city manager has not issued a written declaration of emergency. That is the city manager's purview. It's not really a board action, but we thought since this topic was coming to you, we would include it in your ordinance. I would expect that if you didn't adopt some form of this ordinance tonight, that Mr. Burr would be issuing such a declaration tomorrow and filing that with the city clerk's office.
I would like to amend this and remove Section 2 and say that our board meetings are something that we can address as time goes by. We can always make a decision to cancel an upcoming meeting. We're meeting all the guidelines that are recommended by the CDC here tonight. I'm still working every day. Several of us are. It just seems rather extreme to me, and not necessarily a great example to say that the people's elected board members are no longer part of running the city.
I hear what you're saying. My only concern to that would be if 5 of you are not able to be here
Yeah.
to adopt an ordinance later to do what you're considering doing tonight, then it can't be done.
That's why I'm saying just excise that one section. Go ahead and approve everything else.
Director Garcia?
The CDC has issued guidelines to say if you don't have to go anywhere, stay home. So this is a means for us to not have to try to get here and still take care of the business. And I don't believe that anything would happen in this short period of time that we wouldn't be advised of.
Okay, let me clarify if I can with Director Clark the motion, or Section 1 would remain, which would mean that the emergency is declared. Section 3 would remain so that during the pendency of this emergency, which is being declared, the city manager would have the following authority. You're just suggesting, or your motion might be, to omit Section 2
Correct.
in its entirety. Is that the form of a motion?
Yes.
There's a motion, Mayor.
We have a motion to amend the ordinance by eliminating Section 2 to the proposed ordinance. Do I have a second?
I second.
A second by Director Holliday.
Discussion on the
Discussion on the motion to
motion
amend.
to amend.
For the sake of clarity, just to make sure, by removing that, it doesn't negate anything else in this ordinance. It doesn't overcomplicate it in any way, or we have to change language elsewhere, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we would still meet on a regular basis.
And I would expect that anything over $60,000, which is your current limit, as long as you're meeting, the city manager is going to bring that for your approval.
Say that again.
The threshold right now is $60,000.
Yes.
And I would imagine as long as you are still meeting any item that the city manager needs approved over that amount, he's going to come to you for that approval at your meeting, just like
we have to be here in order for him to do that.
That's a fact. 5 of you anyway.
That's why I'm asking for this amendment.
But see, I may not be here I'm telling you in front, because I think I'm the oldest one, and I'm the one with the asthma and all this stuff. And I know I won't be here.
Well,
we don't
know that. Because if they already told me to stay home, and I'm here. But I mean, if it gets worse, I will not. I thought I better tell you right now.
Oh, and that's my point, is I think that this is premature. I don't think that it is the time for us to say that the voters no longer get representation yet. Maybe tomorrow will be different. But at this moment, we're meeting all the guidelines of the CDC. We all got tested coming in. Anybody who doesn't want to come certainly doesn't have to come if you have concerns.
Director Garcia?
If this amendment was passed and this was removed and we were not able to be here, what would happen?
He would be able to authorize everything that is stated in Section 3.
Oh, he would just go over and do it anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, that's fine.
So the protection is still there. The
It's
intent
still
of this, the
there.
protection is still
Yes.
there, but we are here as long as we
Yes.
can be.
Okay.
And the practical outcome would be the staff would continue to work up barfs. We'd put things on agenda meetings, and at the night of the meeting, if there's not a quorum or there's not 5 here to pass an ordinance, city manager would move forward with his own authority.
And do what he's got to do anyway,
So,
Becca.
to clarify that, if there is a meeting and we don't have enough people in attendance,
This ordinance
he would
authorizes.
still be able to do the business.
This ordinance authorizes him to do all of the things that are enumerated under Section 3.
What comments does the city manager have on this?
Well, I would just say, I think that is sufficient. In that way, if the board is able to meet, we'll be able to meet. It also provides, once we do the declaration of the emergency, it affords me the ability to move forward on something that we may need to fight this COVID virus before I can get it in front of the board again in 2 weeks. Certainly, I would, as I always do, communicate those things to the board, but it would still provide for us to be able to move forward and take care of a necessity that we just can't wait till the board meets again to take
Okay.
care of.
But we can call a special meeting with 2 hours' notice. So it's not like,
But if we can't come, or we're just saying if for
If we've
some
been
reason.
disbanded, we don't have a special meeting.
right, but, no, I agree. I'm assuming that if we approve this as you amend,
Thank you.
and the fact is, Director Garcia, if we can't come, then he's going to be empowered
That's what I
anyways.
was wanting
But
clarification.
at least we have the ability to provide input.
Well, I want to address just the comment Director Clark just made. You're not being disbanded. You're canceling your regularly scheduled agenda and business meetings, which means you can call a special called meeting, and if everyone can be here, then everyone can be here. Just wanted to clarify that. I have no problem with your motion to amend at all, because it's still in place. But I want to clarify that point.
Director Jones?
Is it not legal to have a conference call?
The problem with the conference call is the Freedom of Information Act. If we're trying to abide by the guidelines of CDC, the conference call would have to be here so that the public had access to it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually
Something could be done.
addressed in a recent AG's opinion for 2018. Where there's nothing wrong with having someone call in. So let's say, for example, 1 or 2 of you couldn't make it, but the rest of you were here and we were having a public meeting. You could call in.
Right.
You can't
But
vote, though.
we can't have everyone on a virtual connection.
So I could be on a call with you and the city manager,
No, with
With all
Well,
of
you-
everybody that
or
was
one
here.
of the directors.
You can talk, no, you could call in for the meeting.
You could have stayed home tonight, called in, just like we're doing now.
Can she vote under those circumstances?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think if any of our doctors tell us to stay home, that's what we should do.
Does that constitute a quorum if more than 4 couldn't make it?
Yeah, I think so. Governing body can hold a discussion or take a vote by telephone conference call if, 1, the notice of the public and the press have been given as FOI requires, 2, the speakerphone or similar device is set up in a room where the public and press are able to listen to the conversation. Use of a speakerphone would ensure the observers can hear all portions of the telephonic communication, just as if the members of the governing body were physically present at the meeting.
So it's legal.
Any further discussion? I've got the feeling that I did not get a motion in a second after we did the,
You didn't.
You got a motion and a second, you didn't vote, didn't call a voice vote.
Motion in the second on what?
on the,
I think that was a motion to adopt and.
motion to adopt.
And it's different when I'm not sitting up there. I think you're fine. You did get a motion and a second to adopt. Now we're having discussion. At some point, you'll call the roll. But
Okay.
right now, you have a motion to
Well,
amend.
we have a motion to amend now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
In a second.
We have a motion to amend by Director Clark, seconded by Director Holliday. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Weatherford,
Aye.
Garcia, Folly,
Aye.
Holliday,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Motion to adopt is approved. Motion to amend is approved. This time we'll guess we'll have to entertain another motion.
Continue discussion on the motion as
Any
amended.
further discussion on the motion
I
as
do
amended?
have a question, and that is, when we hereby declare an emergency, I thought that was the only one who could call the emergency was the city manager, not the board.
Well, Director Foley, because we were bringing this to the board anyway, I included it within the ordinance. It states that the city acting by and through its mayor and city manager.
Thank you.
So not us. We're not.
Do we have to do another motion to approve as adopted, as amended?
No, you just continue with discussion if there is any. If not, you can call for the vote to approve as amended.
Very good. Any further?
Wait, may I ask him something?
Go right ahead.
I'm just so confused tonight. You just said, answering his question, the city manager is the only one that can do that, not the board. The city manager or the mayor. That's what's in this paper, right?
That can declare the emergency
Mhm.
under the statutory scheme, yes. But there's more to this ordinance than declaring an emergency of a disaster. There's the additional authority that you're being asked to give to the city manager during the pendency of this emergency.
Okay. I'm just a little slow.
You're all right.
Which
you're
is,
not
allow him to conduct business, enter into contracts, award bids up to $1 million as long as it's in the budget or it's in response to the epidemic itself, and follow the competitive procurement regulations that we have in place, again, unless it's in response to the city's effort to combat this pandemic.
So that's down the drain.
No, ma'am, that's not down the drain. What's down the drain is you're still going to meet, you're still going to function as a board as long as you can get here. But if we don't have a quorum or if we don't have five that can pass an ordinance, the city manager is going to move forward with the authority that you might give him tonight.
Okay. You're not down the drain.
Everybody clear?
Okay, no, it's not for me. I want to make sure that the city manager has the authority, despite our meeting, to call an emergency.
He does. If we pass this.
That's what I'm trying to clarify
This
from
did it right
council.
here. That's what this does. Okay.
Counselor, I'm trying to make sure that even if we meet on a regular basis, that the city manager has the authority to declare an emergency, period.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the omission of Section 2 really doesn't affect that at all. I think that Director Clark's comments are well taken. As long as you can be here, be here. But if you're not,
It still goes on.
then the city manager can still conduct business.
Okay. All right.
All right, so we have all the motions in place and all the seconds in place?
Yes, sir.
So we can call the roll on the
The motion to adopt
motion
as
as,
amended.
to adopt as amended. Thank you.
All right, Director Weatherford,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Folly,
Aye.
Holliday,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted.
And Mayor, not to be redundant, but this ordinance declaring an emergency has an emergency clause.
Oh, how,
And that is Section 7, emergency clause, the City of Hot Springs Board of Directors acting by and through its mayor and city manager, having declared an emergency exists, finds that the provisions set forth here and above are essential to the public health, safety, and welfare of the employees, residents, and visitors of the City of Hot Springs and its environs, and that therefore this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon the date of passage. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt the emergency clause.
motion to adopt the emergency clause, Director Foley, seconded by Director Garcia. Any discussion? Do we do a roll call on that or voice vote? All in favor of the emergency clause, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Emergency clause is adopted. This concludes the action items for tonight's meeting. We're at now Board of Directors items for discussion. Any item for discussion? Director Garcia.
I wanted to say that I support congressional action on the COVID-19, and there are Phase 1 package has been passed, but Phase 2 and 3 are still there that do include some financial aid. But I do not believe that it goes far enough. We will see an increase in unemployment here in Hot Springs. The economic side of this that the city manager mentioned earlier will be hard hit to our tourism industry, our restaurants, our hotels, and all of the people that they employ, the wait staff, the housekeepers, the front desk personnel, across the board in all of these industries. We are very dependent in the city with small businesses on the tourism and gaming industry. And I encourage everyone to contact our members of Congress, as I have done, and ask them to include financial aid for this restaurant and hospitality industry. It is a good package that they have. I believe we need more that will help these people that are going to be unemployed, and to increase unemployment, and to contact our state legislators that we will be ready in the state of Arkansas for this big jump in the unemployment area, because the people still need funds to pay their bills, and it's not their fault or the employer's fault that they can't be at work. Also, I wanted to publicly thank our city manager, the mayor, the police chief, and the police chaplain for the beautiful job they did at the service for Officer Scrimshire yesterday. And I was so moved by our community and their outpouring of support. And I'm proud to be a citizen of Hot Springs.
Thank you. Director Jones.
My sister works at the Alliance Rubber place, and she said when she got off from work yesterday, it was a sight to see. People were lined up all the way into Hot Springs on the side of the road, holding up flags. And she said some of them were saluting the flag. She said she had never seen, well, it's never happened, but she said it just moved her so till she pulled over to the side of the road and just was bewildered. So, it's a blessing. We don't see it, but it's there. It's really a good blessing. He well deserved that.
Director Foley.
Thank you, Mayor.
I would like to express my appreciation for the leadership that Bill has demonstrated in this coronavirus situation for this community. He, I guess we learned that he takes information from a fire hose very well, and he deals with it very well. So I'm proud of you, and I appreciate your leadership.
I am too.
Thank you.
Amen.
Any other comments? We don't have anybody signed up for public discussion?
No, sir.
All right.
Well, with that, Mayor,
Yes,
I
Director
move
Jones?
that we adjourn from
got-
our beautiful meeting
We
tonight.
got a motion. We got a second by Director Foley? Or Director Weatherford, you haven't been on the books yet. You're on the books now. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Is Carol been okay with all of this? I mean, that's one thing I would hate to, transfer something to you that went back to her.
I understand. I'm hunkered down now.
So I have three of them. Yeah,